Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Thursday, March the 6th, 2025, and today's topic is going to begin sort of a deep dive into drawing the head. Today's video will be about drawing the basic profile, the different construction methods that I know. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day, and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. So I'll start a 10-minute timer. This will be beginner-friendly concepts that I just know. So for example, in a profile, and this is somewhat like the Loomis method, but like with my own kind of spin or take. In a basic profile, you're going to get circles, and also in other poses, but like especially I think with the Loomis method. So to begin with, that could be like a beginner-friendly thing to do, is to start with some circles. That might be, as far as like the line work, just draw the circle. Like, so that one I was going this way, and then you could go this way. But basically, think about like the starting point. Like this is where you started. Now, if that one is a little complicated, you might do a square. So to do a square, now the thing about a profile is it mostly fits into the square because of the circle. So you can draw some squares. So this video will be this, like the basic construction, and we'll see like how far I get. So if you draw a square, that's one way to do it. The other way would be to draw a square and put a circle inside the square, if you want to practice drawing circles. And then once you get kind of this basic, like the circle and then the square, then you can do other shapes, but mostly the skull. If we're talking about like the human skull, it'll tend to fit this, and then the variations come from like the angles and proportions. You can also, if you want to skip some of this, you can do more of an egg shape. However, you have to introduce kind of like a tilt to it, so you could do like an ellipse. You could do it this way. Ovals. So I think this is pretty good. Play around with that. And then next, I'll talk about posing it. So for example, let's say, because the body can go in different directions is my point. So for example, let's say you have the shoulders, right? Like that's the shoulders. Then the neck can go like that. The shoulders could be like this. And then you have the profile. So we're going to keep it as a profile. The shoulders could start to turn this way. And the head could still be in profile. So that's the interesting thing. And in fact, it can go this way and still be in profile. But we'll talk about that. I'll save that for maybe the next one. So the basic Loomis method would be to divide it like that, like into quarters, and then it's kind of like that, where this is equal. Now, if you look at some of my early videos, in fact, I got the idea to do this from a video that I did last year. And it's, since I'm using like methods that I've learned, it works. Although the video, I don't know like how good of a video it is. Those are like your thirds. So again, this is basic, but it helps to remember. Part of like the style that I like, and part of the way that I draw, is from imagination, although I am also going to use some reference later. So this is like the basic Loomis method, and then the ear would just kind of go right here. and then your the shape of the face, but that's like the very like basics of it, like kind of like that. And there's a lot of tutorials about this kind of stuff. I've also talked about this, and this will be in the figure drawing playlist. But when I looked at the old stuff that I did, it's fine, because since this is just basic proportions, like, it works. So if it works, then I would use it. So yeah, we'll go over like the features later. The other thing would be, like I said, it's part of it is it's only as good as like the initial circle. So if your circle is off, then obviously like the proportions will be off. If you just want to start with the square, you could start it that way, and sometimes that's the easier way. But if it's the same kind of difference where you could just go like this and then you kind of carve it. So yeah, it just depends on your needs. Like, it works this way too. I think it's good to kind of know these different approaches, because when you're sketching something, especially if you're just kind of making stuff up, sometimes this will be the better thing, and sometimes like that'll be the better thing. A lot of times the head's not exactly in profile, but it can be dramatic. And just keep in mind, a lot of it is just they're measuring, their methods to like do proportion and measuring and construction. So there's just different ways of going about it. So the other way is with the oval shape. It can get a little bit, it can work. I mean, like, for example, if you have like this oval right here, I mean, that could also be a profile. And then you can add the construction lines that way. The oval tends to give you the pose already. Like, since the head isn't like in a profile, the head isn't like a perfect oval. So for example, if you have this, it sort of goes this way. So it can be a little bit more tricky to do like the starting with the oval. That's why I recommend doing a circle for like a profile, but like a front view works a little bit better. So this is just coming from anatomy, by the way. Like, it's the skull that's like making that happen. For these other ones, what I'm going to do is kind of what I did with the past few days, where I just looked up like profile portraits on Pinterest, for example, and I'm not going to zoom in and look at the details, and I'm just going to, since it is a circle, it can kind of go left or right, and I'm just going to keep, yeah, like the thumbnails zoomed out and just kind of go off of that. Now that can also be applied to the ones that, these are just drawn from imagination, like using construction. So you can go back and like make it into a person or a character. You can start with one. So for example, this one, you can establish the pose, and this is going off of like a reference picture, and do it this way. And yeah, I mean, it helps. Because it's the construction that we're wanting to understand. As far as like the pose itself, it helps to know, like, for example, this line, because once you get this one, then you can get this one, the neck. So that establishes the pose. And then the brow. And then you can do all like the divisions right here. Also, if the pose is, so get the, when I say pose, I mean like the pose of the head. So if you have this, it could be that like the shoulders, like the head is turned, kind of like what this is doing right here. It's good to establish like the back, because if it's turning, that show like the head is turning. But like, let's sort of think about like what's going on. Let me zoom in here. So this determines this. So like that's the head turning or tilting, and then the brow right here, and then the chin goes right here, and that's how you can get the head to tilt, and the ear is going to be around here. So to do that again, you can, let me look at something here. Sometimes you get sort of a kind of like a tilt, like a 3/4, but it's still basically a profile. So for example, let's go this way, and then, so this is a pretty important line right there. And then once you have that, then the brow line is sort of the next kind of thing. And then it's good to sort of place like the ear, because the cranium will kind of go behind the ear like that. It depends on like the specific like pose and everything. That's just in general. So I'll stick with this page, and like maybe I'll do some shading or something. So I like to do it in steps. So this is, to me, like, I call this the sketch. So it could involve construction. So for example, if you are just wanting to draw like a pose, so like I said, this is the rest of the figure, and we'll mess with that later. So this could still be the profile, kind of like that, and then the face kind of comes off of that, and this is the chin. So this is starting from like the pose and then adding the head onto the body. So this one was made up, but then let's say you have reference, and in the reference picture there's a tilt of the shoulder. That's pretty important if you're wanting to draw like more of the body. And then the head is right here, and it's a profile, so it's a back view, but like the head is turning. So yeah, it's the same thing. This sets up like the profile right here. And that's the neck. And this one's from reference. So hopefully that kind of made sense. But yeah, I'll stick with this, kind of a deep dive into drawing heads. there's just different approaches to it. You can look at something and draw it. I'm not that interested in copying pictures, like making exact copies, although you could if you wanted to be a little bit more exact with like the measurements and stuff. The main thing with like the back view is that the back tends to dominate the neck area, and that's how you kind of know that is like the back view. Obviously it depends on like the clothing and everything. Hopefully it was beginner friendly, but it is basic drawing. I'll put it into like the figure drawing playlist. You'll notice like in some of these, as I'm glancing at it, once you place the ear, sometimes you'll have to like add a little bit to the cranium. And this is sort of neck anatomy here. But there's so many different profiles. If you look at photos and stuff, you'll see that there's a lot of variety to it. And even if you have something kind of like this, you can adjust it. That'll be it for today. I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine. And if you like these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it. And until next time, keep on sketching.